Karen Johnson was a woman who believed in the power of hard work. Every morning she woke up at 6 a.m., brewed herself a cup of coffee, and prepared for another day at her job. She worked as an account manager at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago, a position she had earned through years of dedication and skill. Karen wasn't just good at her job, she was exceptional. Her presentations were sharp, her strategies innovative, and her ability to connect with clients unmatched. But despite all her achievements, there was one thing that often overshadowed her talent: her skin color. The office where Karen worked was not diverse. Most of her co-workers were white, and while some were kind and professional, others made it clear they didn't think Karen belonged. They whispered about her behind closed doors, questioning how someone like her could rise so quickly in the company. "She got lucky," one coworker muttered during a break. "They probably hired her just to fill a quota," another chimed in. These comments stung, but Karen chose to ignore them. She focused on doing her best and proving her worth every single day. On this particular morning, Karen arrived early as usual. She liked getting to the office before anyone else. It gave her time to organize her thoughts and prepare for the day ahead. As she settled into her desk, she opened her laptop and began reviewing the notes for the team meeting scheduled for later that afternoon. It was an important meeting. The company was pitching a new campaign to one of their biggest clients, and Karen had spent weeks perfecting her ideas. She felt confident about her proposal and knew it would impress everyone, if only they'd give her a chance to present it without interruptions. By 9 a.m., the office began filling up. Co-workers trickled in, some stopping by Karen's desk to exchange pleasantries. "Morning, Karen," said Lisa, a young intern who admired Karen's professionalism. "Good luck with your presentation today." Karen smiled warmly. "Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that." But not everyone greeted her with kindness. Greg Miller, a senior account executive, barely acknowledged Karen as he passed her desk. Greg had always been difficult to work with, but lately, his attitude toward Karen had grown even worse. He resented her recent promotion, which placed her above him in the company hierarchy. To Greg, Karen was nothing more than a nuisance, a reminder that he wasn't as indispensable as he thought he was. As the day wore on, tension simmered beneath the surface. During lunch, Greg gathered a small group of coworkers in the break room. "Can you believe they promoted her over us?" he complained, his voice dripping with bitterness. "She doesn't even know what she's doing half the time. She's just here because of diversity points," added Sarah, another colleague who agreed with Greg. "It's ridiculous." Their conversation continued, growing louder and more heated. No one dared to challenge them. Even those who didn't share their views remained silent, afraid of becoming targets themselves. By the time the team meeting rolled around, the air in the conference room was thick with unspoken hostility. Karen walked into the meeting carrying her folder and a sense of determination. She took her seat at the table, ignoring the glares from certain corners of the room. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up and began presenting her ideas. Her voice was steady and clear as she outlined her strategy for the upcoming campaign. For a few moments, everything seemed fine. Some people nodded along, taking notes. Others appeared genuinely interested in what she had to say. Then Greg interrupted her. "Hold on a second," he said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "I don't see how this is going to work. Your plan seems unrealistic." Karen paused, surprised but not deterred. "Let me explain further," she replied calmly. "If you look at the data—" No. Greg interrupted again, waving his hand dismissively. "We don't need to waste time on this. Maybe you should stick to simpler tasks instead of trying to come up with these grand schemes." The room fell silent. Several people exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure of how to respond. Karen clenched her fists under the table, refusing to let Greg's rudeness shake her confidence. "If you'll allow me to finish," she said firmly, "I can address any concerns you might have." Greg smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Sure, go ahead. But don't expect anyone to take you seriously." Karen forced herself to continue, though her heart raced with frustration. She finished her presentation as professionally as possible, then returned to her seat. The rest of the meeting dragged on, but Karen couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, something ugly. Later that afternoon, as Karen walked back to her desk, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could react, someone shouted, "Here's your damn coffee!" A can of Coke flew through the air and hit her squarely in the chest. The liquid exploded everywhere, soaking her blouse and dripping onto the floor. Karen froze, stunned by the sudden attack. The office erupted into chaos. Gasps filled the room as people turned to see what had happened. Greg stood nearby, smirking, while a few others tried to suppress their laughter. Most of the staff looked away, too afraid or indifferent to intervene. Tears welled up in Karen's eyes, not because of the sticky mess now covering her clothes, but because of the sheer humiliation of being treated like this in front of her peers. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Karen stood there, frozen, as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't just a prank, it was an act of cruelty fueled by prejudice. And worst of all, no one in the room was stepping forward to defend her. Just then, the elevator doors pinged open. Out stepped Daniel Carter, Karen's husband. Tall, broad-shouldered, and exuding authority, Daniel commanded attention wherever he went. He had planned to surprise Karen with lunch today, completely unaware of the storm he was about to walk into. As he scanned the room, his gaze landed on Karen, the Coke-stained blouse, the empty can on the floor, and the guilty expressions plastered across several faces. Without saying a word, Daniel strode toward her, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. His presence alone shifted the energy in the room. For the first time, the perpetrators realized the magnitude of what they had done and the consequences that might follow. Daniel Carter's arrival in the office felt like a thunderclap. His towering frame and commanding presence immediately drew attention, even from those who weren't sure who he was. As he walked toward Karen, his expression was unreadable, calm, but intense, like a storm waiting to break. He placed a protective arm around her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked softly, his voice filled with concern. Karen nodded, though her hands were trembling slightly. She tried to blink away the tears that threatened to spill, but they lingered stubbornly in her eyes. Daniel's jaw tightened as he turned to face the room. His piercing gaze swept over the crowd of co-workers, many of whom avoided making eye contact. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. "What happened here?" Daniel demanded, his tone sharp and direct. No one answered. The employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some pretending to shuffle papers or check their phones. Finally, Greg Miller cleared his throat nervously and stepped forward. "It was just a joke," Greg stammered, his usual bravado crumbling under Daniel's glare. "We didn't mean anything by it." "A joke?" Daniel repeated, his voice rising slightly. His words cut through the tension like a knife. "Throwing drinks on someone is now considered funny? Let me guess. You think because she's black, this kind of behavior is acceptable?" The room fell silent again, the weight of Daniel's accusation sinking in. Greg's face turned red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, it was hard to tell. No, that's not what I meant," he protested weakly. "It wasn't about race. We were just messing around." Daniel took a step closer to Greg, his towering height making the other man shrink back instinctively. "Messing around," Daniel said, his voice low and dangerous. "You call humiliating someone in front of their colleagues messing around? Do you have any idea how disrespectful and cruel that is?" Greg opened his mouth to respond, but quickly closed it when he realized there was no good answer. Some of the other employees began whispering among themselves, their guilt written all over their faces. A few glanced at Karen, perhaps hoping for forgiveness, but she remained silent, leaning against Daniel for support. Daniel's mind raced as he processed the situation. He knew racism existed. It wasn't something he could ignore, given his own experiences and the stories Karen had shared with him over the years. But seeing it firsthand, especially in such a blatant and public way, filled him with a mix Daniel's anger simmered just below the surface, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew losing control wouldn't help Karen or the situation. Instead, he focused on finding a solution, one that would make it clear such behavior would not be tolerated. Without another word, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. The room fell eerily silent as everyone watched him, unsure of what he was doing. "Robert?" "It's Daniel Carter," he said when the call connected. His tone was firm but controlled. "I need you to come down to the office right now. There's been an incident involving my wife and I want it handled immediately." The mention of Robert Simmons, the company's CEO, sent a ripple of panic through the room. Robert wasn't known for being lenient, especially when it came to workplace conduct. And if anyone understood the influence Daniel Carter carried, it was Robert. Within minutes, the elevator doors opened again, and Robert stepped out, looking flustered and unprepared for whatever awaited him. "What's going on?" Robert asked, glancing between Daniel and the sea of nervous faces in the office. Daniel didn't waste time with pleasantries. He pointed at Greg and the others involved in the incident. "These people humiliated my wife in front of her colleagues," he said, his voice steady but laced with fury. "They threw a drink on her and laughed about it. This isn't just unacceptable, it's disgusting. I want every single one of them fired. Effective immediately." Robert's eyes widened in shock. Firing multiple employees was no small decision, and he hesitated, clearly weighing the consequences. "Daniel, I understand your frustration," he began cautiously. "But maybe we can handle this internally. Perhaps disciplinary action?" "No," Daniel interrupted, cutting him off. His tone left no room for negotiation. "This isn't about discipline, it's about accountability. If you don't fire them, then you're sending a message that this kind of behavior is okay. Is that really what you want your company to stand for?" Robert glanced around the room, his gaze landing on Karen, who still stood quietly beside Daniel. Her blouse was stained, her expression unreadable, but there was a quiet strength in the way she held herself. Finally, Robert sighed and nodded reluctantly. "All right," he said. "If that's what you want, it'll be done." With that, Robert turned to address the staff. "Greg Miller, Sarah Collins, and anyone else involved in this incident, please gather your belongings. You're terminated, effective immediately." His words echoed through the office like a death sentence. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Greg and Sarah exchanged panicked looks. "This isn't fair," Greg blurted out, his face pale with disbelief. "You can't do this, it was just a stupid prank." "A prank?" Daniel shot back, his voice icy. "Do you throw drinks on all your coworkers as part of your pranks? Or is it only reserved for black women? Because if that's the case, I'd say you've made your true feelings pretty clear." Greg opened his mouth to argue but quickly shut it when he realized no one was coming to his defense. Even those who had laughed at his so-called joke earlier now avoided eye contact, unwilling to share in his fate. One by one, Greg and the others were escorted out of the building, their careers crumbling before their eyes. As the chaos subsided, Karen finally spoke. "Thank you," she said softly, looking up at Daniel. Her voice was filled with gratitude, but also something else, uncertainty. Daniel noticed it immediately and frowned. "What's wrong?" he asked, his tone softening. "You should feel relieved. Those people won't hurt you again." Karen hesitated, glancing around the nearly empty office. "It's not that simple," she admitted. "Yes, they got what they deserved, but what about everyone else? What about the ones who stood by and did nothing? They let it happen. Daniel, they didn't stop it." Daniel's expression darkened as he considered her words. She was right. While firing Greg and his accomplices addressed the immediate problem, it didn't solve the deeper issue, a culture of silence and complicity that allowed racism and cruelty to flourish unchecked. Still, he chose his next words carefully. "You're right," he said after a moment. "But punishing everyone isn't the answer. What matters now is making sure something like this never happens again. We need to create a better environment, not just here, but everywhere. And you, Karen, are stronger than all of this. Don't let them take that away from you." Karen nodded slowly, though doubt lingered in her eyes. For years, she had worked tirelessly to prove herself, to rise above the stereotypes and biases that tried to hold her back. But today felt different. Today she realized that no matter how hard she worked or how much she achieved, some people would always see her skin color first. That realization weighed heavily on her heart. That evening, as they drove home together, Daniel reached over and took Karen's hand. "I know I acted impulsively today," he said gently. "And while I don't regret standing up for you, I want to know, what do you want moving forward? How can I support you?" Karen thought carefully before answering. "I don't want pity or special treatment," she said firmly. "I want to show the world and myself that I'm stronger than this. Maybe it's time for me to start my own company. A place where people like me aren't just accepted but celebrated, where diversity isn't treated as a checkbox, but as a strength." Daniel smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "Then let's do it," he said. "Whatever you need, I'm here. Let's build something incredible." For the first time that day, Karen felt a spark of hope. Yes, the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it head on. With Daniel by her side and a newfound determination burning within her, she knew she could turn this painful experience into something meaningful, something transformative. Over the next few weeks, Karen poured her energy into planning her new venture. She called it Empower Media, a name that reflected her vision of creating opportunities for marginalized voices in the marketing industry. Daniel offered his resources and connections, helping her secure funding and attract top talent. Together, they assembled a team of passionate individuals who shared Karen's commitment to inclusivity and innovation. Word of Karen's story spread quickly, thanks in part to media coverage of the Coke incident and its aftermath. People were inspired by her resilience and determination to rise above adversity. Clients eager to work with a leader who embodied integrity and strength began reaching out, and soon, Empower Media gained traction. Meanwhile, the fallout from the Coke incident continued to reverberate through the industry. Greg and his former co-workers struggled to find new jobs, their reputations tarnished by the scandal. Some attempted to apologize publicly, claiming they'd learned their lesson, but few believed them. Social media was flooded with debates about accountability, privilege, and systemic racism, sparking conversations that extended far beyond the walls of the marketing firm. Through it all, Karen remained focused on her mission. She refused to let bitterness consume her, choosing instead to channel her emotions into building a brighter future for herself and for others. Karen's decision to start her own company marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She poured every ounce of her energy into making Empower Media a reality. Daniel supported her fully, offering advice and connections whenever she needed them. But Karen was determined to build something on her own terms. This wasn't just about bouncing back from the Coke incident, it was about proving that she could create something meaningful, something that would outlast the pain of that day. The first step was assembling a team. Karen knew exactly what kind of people she wanted to work with, individuals who shared her values of inclusivity, creativity, and hard work. She reached out to friends, former colleagues, and even strangers whose work she admired. One by one, they joined her cause, excited by the vision of a company that prioritized diversity and gave everyone a voice. Among them was Maria Lopez, a talented graphic designer who had faced discrimination at her previous job. "When Karen told me about Empower Media," Maria said later, "I felt like I finally found a place where I belong." Karen also made sure to hire people who didn't look like her or come from the same background. She believed that true diversity meant bringing together individuals from all walks of life, different races, genders, ages, and experiences. "We're stronger when we embrace our differences," she often said during interviews. "That's how we innovate. That's how we grow." As Empower Media began to take shape, Karen faced challenges she hadn't anticipated. Some potential clients were hesitant to work with a new company, especially one led by a Black woman. Others questioned whether Empower Media could compete with larger, more established firms. But Karen refused to let doubt creep in. She reminded herself of why she started this journey, to show the world that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle. Her first big break came when a major clothing brand approached her. They were looking for a fresh perspective for their upcoming campaign, and someone had recommended Karen. At first, the client was skeptical. "Are you sure you can handle this?" they asked during their initial meeting. Karen smiled confidently. "Absolutely," she replied, "and I promise you won't regret it." True to her word, Karen delivered a campaign that exceeded expectations. Her team crafted bold visuals and compelling messages that resonated with audiences across the country. Sales soared, and the client couldn't stop praising Empower Media. Word spread quickly, and soon other companies began reaching out. Within months, Empower Media went from being an unknown startup to a rising star in the marketing industry. Despite her success, Karen never forgot the lessons she learned from the Coke incident. She made it a priority to foster a workplace culture built on respect and equality. Every Monday morning, she held a team meeting where employees were encouraged to share their thoughts and ideas. No suggestion was too small, and no voice went unheard. Karen also implemented strict policies against harassment and discrimination, ensuring that everyone felt safe and valued. But running a business wasn't without its difficulties. There were late nights spent reviewing proposals, stressful phone calls with difficult clients, and moments when Karen wondered if she was cut out for entrepreneurship. During those times, Daniel was her rock. He listened patiently as she vented her frustrations and reminded her of how far she'd come. "You've already proven yourself," he would say. "Don't let self-doubt hold you back now." Karen also leaned on her team for support. They became more than co-workers. They became family. When one employee struggled with personal issues, the entire team rallied around them, offering help and encouragement. When another achieved a milestone, everyone celebrated together. It was this sense of unity that kept Karen going, even on the toughest days. Outside of work, Karen used her platform to advocate for change. She gave talks at schools and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging others to pursue their dreams despite the obstacles they might face. "Racism exists," she told a group of high school students during one visit. "But don't let it define you. Use it as fuel to push harder, to aim higher. Show the world what you're capable of." Her words inspired many, including a young girl named Ava, who wrote Karen a letter thanking her for being a role model. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Ava wrote. Strong and brave and unstoppable. Karen framed the letter and hung it on her office wall, a reminder of why she fought so hard every day. Meanwhile, the fallout from the Coke incident continued to ripple through the industry. Greg Miller and his former co-workers found themselves ostracized, their careers derailed by the scandal. Some tried to downplay their actions, claiming they had been misunderstood. Others attempted to distance themselves from Greg, blaming him for everything. But none of it mattered. The damage was done. Their reputations were tarnished, and few companies were willing to take a chance on them. Social media played a significant role in keeping the conversation alive. People debated the ethics of Daniel's decision to fire everyone involved, with some praising him for taking a stand, and others criticizing him for being too harsh. Opinions varied widely, but one thing was clear. The incident had sparked a national dialogue about racism and accountability in the workplace. Journalists wrote articles analyzing the event, while activists used it as a rallying cry for greater diversity and inclusion. Through it all, Karen remained focused on her mission. She didn't dwell on revenge or bitterness. Instead, she channeled her emotions into building a better future for herself, for her team, and for anyone who dared to dream bigger than the limitations placed upon them. Empower Media became more than just a company. It became a symbol of hope and resilience. One evening, as Karen sat in her office reflecting on everything that had happened, she realized something profound. The Coke incident had been one of the darkest moments of her life, but it had also been a turning point. It forced her to confront the ugly realities of racism and inequality, yes, but it also showed her the power of standing up for what's right. And most importantly, it taught her that she was stronger than she ever imagined. With a smile, Karen turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow was a new day, filled with endless possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them head on. After all, she had already proven that she could turn adversity into opportunity. Karen's journey with Empower Media continued to gain momentum as the months passed. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Her bold vision of creating a workplace that celebrated diversity and innovation had struck a chord with clients and employees alike. Word of mouth spread quickly, and soon Empower Media became known as one of the most forward-thinking marketing firms in the industry. But Karen knew that success wasn't just about numbers or accolades. It was about making a difference for her team, for her community, and for herself. One of the biggest milestones came when Empower Media won a major contract with a global tech company. This was the kind of opportunity Karen had dreamed of when she first started the business. The client wanted a campaign that would resonate with underrepresented communities, and they believed Karen's unique perspective made her the perfect person for the job. For weeks, Karen and her team worked tirelessly, brainstorming ideas and refining every detail. They spent late nights in the office, fueled by coffee and determination. When the campaign finally launched, it was met with overwhelming praise. Audiences connected deeply with its message of empowerment and inclusion, and sales for the tech company skyrocketed. The success of the campaign brought even more attention to Empower Media. Journalists began reaching out to Karen, eager to learn more about her story. She gave interviews to magazines, podcasts, and TV shows, sharing not only her professional achievements but also her personal struggles. "I didn't start this company because I wanted revenge," she said during one interview. "I started it because I wanted to create something better, something that showed people like me that we belong, that our voices matter." Her words resonated with millions. Letters poured in from people across the country, thanking Karen for being a source of inspiration. Some were young students hoping to break into creative fields. Others were professionals who had faced discrimination at work and felt seen for the first time. Karen read every letter, touched by the impact her story was having. She kept a folder on her desk filled with these notes, pulling it out whenever she needed a reminder of why she did what she did. Despite her growing fame, Karen remained grounded. She never forgot where she came from or the challenges she had overcome. Every morning she arrived at the office early, ready to roll up her sleeves and tackle whatever lay ahead. She treated her employees with kindness and respect, always making time to listen to their concerns or celebrate their successes. Under her leadership, Empower Media became a place where people felt valued, not just as workers but as human beings. But running a successful company wasn't without its difficulties. As Empower Media grew, so did the pressure. Competitors began taking notice, and some weren't shy about trying to undermine Karen's efforts. One rival firm even launched a smear campaign, spreading false rumors about Empower Media's practices. At first, Karen was shaken. She worried that the negativity might hurt her team's morale or damage the company's reputation. But instead of letting it get to her, she chose to rise above it. "We're not going to stoop to their level," she told her team during a meeting. "Our work speaks for itself. Let's focus on doing what we do best, creating campaigns that inspire and connect." Her confidence reassured everyone, and together they doubled down on their commitment to excellence. Within weeks, the rumors fizzled out, overshadowed by another successful campaign that earned Empower Media even more recognition. Outside of work, Karen continued to use her platform to advocate for change. She partnered with local organizations to host workshops and mentorship programs for underprivileged youth. She spoke at conferences about the importance of diversity in the workplace, urging other companies to follow her lead. And she donated a portion of Empower Media's profits to charities focused on education and equality. For Karen, success wasn't just about building a profitable business. It was about giving back. Daniel supported Karen every step of the way, proud of everything she had accomplished. He often joked that he was just along for the ride, but Karen knew how much his encouragement meant to her. On weekends, they took breaks from the hustle and bustle of work to recharge. Sometimes they went hiking in the nearby woods, enjoying the peace and quiet. Other times they stayed home, cooking dinner together and watching old movies. These moments reminded Karen to slow down and appreciate the little things, the laughter, the love, the simple joys of life. As Empower Media flourished, Karen couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Just a year ago, she had been the victim of a cruel act of racism, a moment that could have broken her spirit. But instead of letting it define her, she used it as fuel to push harder, to aim higher. Now she stood at the helm of a company that was changing lives, including her own. Still, Karen knew there was more work to be done. Racism and inequality were deeply rooted issues, and while Empower Media was making strides, the fight was far from over. She often thought about the people who had stood by silently during the Coke incident, the ones who hadn't spoken up or intervened. Though she forgave them, she couldn't forget the lesson they had taught her. Silence can be just as harmful as action. That's why she made it a point to speak out whenever she saw injustice, whether it was in her industry or in society at large. One day, Karen received an email from Greg Miller. It had been months since the incident, and she hadn't heard from him since he was fired. The subject line read simply, "Apology." Curious, she opened the message. In it, Greg admitted that he had been wrong, that throwing the Coke on her was cruel and unacceptable. He claimed he had learned from his mistakes and hoped Karen could find it in her heart to forgive him. Karen read the email several times, weighing her emotions. Part of her wanted to dismiss it outright. After all, Greg's actions had caused her immense pain. But another part of her recognized that true growth required compassion, even for those who had hurt her. Finally, she replied, keeping her response brief and measured. "Thank you for apologizing," she wrote. "I hope you truly have learned from this experience. Moving forward, I encourage you to treat others with the respect and dignity they deserve." Sending the email felt like closing a chapter. Karen didn't expect Greg to change overnight, nor did she feel obligated to keep in touch with him. But acknowledging his apology allowed her to let go of any lingering bitterness. She knew holding on to anger would only weigh her down, and she refused to carry that burden any longer. As the year drew to a close, Karen organized a holiday party for her team. It was held at a cozy venue downtown, decorated with twinkling lights and festive garlands. Employees mingled, laughing and sharing stories as music played softly in the background. Karen stood at the front of the room, raising a glass to make a toast. "This has been an incredible year," she began, her voice warm and steady. "We've faced challenges, yes, but we've also achieved so much. Together, we've built something special, something that proves diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's a strength. So here's to us, to our hard work, our creativity, and our unwavering belief in each other. Thank you for making Empower Media the amazing place it is." The room erupted in applause, and Karen felt a swell of pride. Looking around at the faces of her team, she realized how lucky she was. These were people who believed in her vision, who worked tirelessly to bring it to life. They weren't just colleagues, they were family. That night, as Karen drove home, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life hadn't always been easy, but it had taught her resilience, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them head-on. After all, she had already proven that she could turn adversity into opportunity, and that was a lesson she would carry with her forever. Karen's journey with Empower Media reached new heights in the months that followed. The company wasn't just thriving, it was becoming a beacon of hope for people who had long been overlooked in the marketing world. Her commitment to diversity and inclusion inspired others in the industry to rethink their own practices. Competitors began adopting similar values, and clients actively sought out companies that prioritized representation. Karen's influence stretched far beyond her office walls. It was sparking a movement. One day, Karen received an invitation that took her by surprise. A prestigious business magazine wanted to feature her as its Entrepreneur of the Year. At first, she hesitated. Accepting such an honor felt surreal, almost overwhelming. She had started Empower Media not for recognition, but to create change. Still, Daniel encouraged her to embrace it. "This isn't just about you," he said. It's about showing the world what's possible when someone refuses to give up. The award ceremony was held at a grand hotel downtown. Karen wore a sleek navy blue dress, her confidence radiating as she walked onto the stage to accept the trophy. The room erupted in applause and cameras flashed as she stood behind the podium. For a moment she paused, taking in the sea of faces before her. Then she began to speak. When I started Empower Media, I didn't know if anyone would believe in me, Karen said, her voice steady and sincere. I faced racism, doubt, and moments where I questioned whether I could keep going. But through it all, I learned something important, that our struggles can become our strength. This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every person who has ever been told they don't belong, who has ever been underestimated, who has ever dared to dream bigger than the world allowed them to. To those people, I say this: keep fighting. Your voice matters. Speech moved many in the audience to tears. Journalists praised her humility and passion, calling her one of the most inspiring leaders of her generation. Social media lit up with posts celebrating her achievement, and messages of gratitude poured in from strangers around the globe. Karen framed the award and placed it on a shelf in her office, not as a symbol of personal success, but as a reminder of how far she and so many others had come. Despite the accolades, Karen remained focused on her mission. She knew that true change required more than awards or headlines. It required action. Empower Media launched a program called Empower Voices, which provided mentorship and resources to aspiring marketers from marginalized communities. Participants received training, networking opportunities, and even funding to launch their own projects. The initiative quickly gained traction, drawing support from industry leaders and organizations eager to help. Karen also expanded Empower Media's reach internationally. She traveled to cities across Europe and Asia, meeting with potential partners and clients. Everywhere she went, she shared her story and vision, encouraging others to join her in creating a more inclusive world. In London, she spoke at a conference about the importance of diverse perspectives in advertising. In Tokyo, she collaborated with local artists to develop campaigns that celebrated cultural heritage. Each trip reinforced her belief that empathy and understanding could bridge even the widest divides. Back home, Empower Media continued to grow. New employees joined the team, bringing fresh ideas and energy. Karen made sure everyone felt welcome regardless of their background or experience level. She often reminded her staff that mistakes were part of the process, as long as they learned from them and kept moving forward. This mindset fostered a culture of innovation and collaboration, setting Empower Media apart from its competitors. But Karen's journey wasn't without challenges. As the company expanded, managing logistics became increasingly complex. Deadlines loomed, budgets tightened, and disagreements occasionally arose within the team. There were days when Karen felt overwhelmed, wondering if she was doing enough. On those days, she leaned on Daniel and her closest colleagues for support. They reminded her of how much she had already achieved and encouraged her to take things one step at a time. Through it all, Karen never lost sight of her purpose. She used her platform to advocate for systemic change, speaking out against racism and inequality whenever she had the chance. She wrote op-eds for major newspapers, urging companies to prioritize diversity, not as a trend, but as a core value. She partnered with nonprofits to raise awareness about issues affecting marginalized communities, and she continued to mentor young professionals, offering guidance and encouragement to those navigating the same obstacles she once faced. One evening, as Karen sat in her office reflecting on everything that had happened, she realized something profound. The Coke incident, the moment that had nearly broken her, had ultimately set her free. It forced her to confront the ugliness of racism and discrimination, yes, but it also showed her the power of resilience and determination. Without that painful experience, she might never have found the courage to start Empower Media or to fight for a better future. With a smile, Karen turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow was a new day, filled with endless possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them head-on. After all, she had already proven that she could turn adversity into opportunity. And now, she was using that opportunity to lift others up, to create a world where everyone, regardless of their race, gender, or background, could thrive. Years later, when people looked back on Karen Johnson's legacy, they wouldn't remember her solely for the Coke incident or the awards she won. They would remember her for the lives she touched, the barriers she broke, and the example she set. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a trailblazer, a leader, and a force for good. And though her journey had been difficult at times, she wouldn't have changed a thing, because every step, every struggle, and every triumph had led her to where she was meant to be, standing tall, proud, and unstoppable.